This is Just a Few Questions. I'm Marc Sims. My guest is Illinois State Representative Kam Buckner. Welcome to the show, Kam Buckner.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me.
No, I'm so happy that you're here. So real quick, you represent the 26th District in the House of Representatives, Illinois State House. What are your boundaries?
It's essentially Chicago's lakefront from South Chicago and South Shore up to the Gold Coast. So it encompasses neighborhoods like Bronzeville, Hyde Park, Kenwood, the South Loop, River North, Streeterville, got some Washington Park and some Greater Grand Crossing in there as well.
That's excellent. Now, when I think Kam Buckner, I think about the CTA. Maybe because when I saw you running for mayor, you were always on the train. Now, am I wrong? Or is that impression still true?
It is true. I'm a transit geek, a self-proclaimed transit geek. And one of my favorite parts about Chicago is the fact that we have a public transit system that can get you from one end of the city to the other. And so I spent a lot of time in my role as a state rep dealing with transit issues. And then when I ran for mayor, it really became a center part of my campaign. And so many people do see me as a transit guy or the transit guy.
Yeah, that's which is pretty cool. So this is why I brought you on the program to answer this question. Here it goes. Kam Buckner, will the CTA, because they're extending the red line. I remember when they built the red line. I mean, barely remember. I was a wee small child when they put the red line
Okay.
in the late 60s. And so they're going to finally extend the red line to 130th Street. So will the CTA red line, because when I was a kid, it was called the Lake Dan Ryan Rapid Transit, of course. Will the CTA red line ever be safe enough to use late at night for women, teens, and scaredy cat men like me?
Well, let me say this, Margaret, and I appreciate the question. I want to say that I think we got to be careful about bifurcating the system. For sure, the red line needs to be safe, and so does the green line, and so does the blue line, so does the orange and pink and yellow line for everybody that rides it, but specifically for folks who may be in more vulnerable positions. I think often as Chicagoans, we kind of put things into these silos. And what happens is we exacerbate the tale of two cities. Where if we only are concerned with the safety on the red line, we are going to leave some other lines, some other people without the resources that they need. And so I kind of want to put it into the schism of all of the CTA, and I think it can be. I think that the CTA can be safe for all people who are looking to ride and looking to be commuters, no matter where they're from and what their issues are. But we got to find a way to do it right now. The biggest issue for me is that as ridership has not increased to the levels it needs to be at, the CTA has at least gotten the perception of not being safe. And what I always remind people is that high ridership means that there are more eyes on the street. And if we look at these concepts through urban theorism, we know that the presence of more people really has deterred criminal behavior, because perpetrators, they prefer less populated areas when they commit crimes, because you're less likely to be caught. A safe public transit system is a healthy public transit system that's actually running, that's reliable, that's working on time, because people are able to use it. And when we see more crowded trains, more crowded buses, we actually see less crime. So I do believe it can happen. There's some examples around the country and around the world on small things we can begin to do now to do that. But that is a question that needs to be at the heart of whatever happens with the CTA moving forward.
No, I'm glad you said that. I'm not too far from the 95th Street bus station, and I lived there all my life. And I can't remember the last time I caught the train at 95th Street. I caught it from 87th Street, but 95th Street, and the place has been redone, of course. And that perception of crime keeps people like me off the train. And if I take the train, I'm not walking home from the damn red line to go down 95th Street. Oh no! And so I know that's maybe beyond what you do as a state rep, but how do we stop this? How do we lower the crime so much that really helps the perception of crime?
Yeah, that's a great question, Mark. And I'll say, even though some of those specifics aren't really in the purview of the role I sit in today, I will say that as a lifelong Chicagoan, as a person who grew up south of the 95th Street Red Line terminus, as a person who spent many nights trying to find the safest and smartest ways to get from 95th Street to my parents' home on 103rd Street. When I was in law school at DePaul, I would, finish up my night classes and take the train from the Jackson Street station down to 95th Street, and then have to decide whether or not I would take the 95 West or the 103rd West to my parents' home in Washington Heights, or sometimes I would need to walk But it was always a concerted effort to me on how to do it and to do it safely without finding myself in the middle of some trouble, right? I think the biggest thing that we've got to do is that first we got to use what we have to get where we want to get. Um, we have a CTA security system right now that has some 32,000 cameras, but they're not really equipped, and they don't speak to each other, right? Only some of those cameras are equipped to relay footage in real time, and we know that more regular information feeds will enable a more rapid response when things happen. So I think that has to be a part of it. I've talked about creating some text contemporaneous text programs where, CTA says if you see something, say something, but the answer is to say something to who, right? So if we have a system where people can say something untoward is going on train number, whatever, instead of having to make someone get up and push the button while something may be happening, I think it makes things safer, and it makes people realize that there are folks on the other end watching and listening who care about the safety. And overall, I think we've got to change the branding and the perception of Chicago Transit Authority. I think far too many Chicagoans don't trust it because of the things that have happened. But we got to make it a welcoming space. We got to make it so that all the ills of society are not ending up on our transit system. Mark, I always tell people that public transit is interesting because I think it's a microcosm of everything that's going on in our community. So if you show me a public transit system that is not safe, I can show you a city that has some public safety issues. If you show me a public transit system that is filled with folks who have mental health issues, I can show you a city or a state who has not taken mental health seriously. And the list goes on and on and on. But we got to find a way that we're not dumping all of our problems as well onto the train, right? You look at the red line and the blue line specifically, the two trains that run all night long, and they become homeless shelters, they become homeless encampments, they become mental health shelters, because we have not dealt with some of the root issues that we need to deal with as a city and as a society. And so I think we've got to find a way to do all these things at once. Not one is more important than the other, but it's going to take some coordination.
No, I agree. Now, my understanding that the Chicago Police Department has a separate unit that handles the CTA. Is that true?
They do. I think the unit is not as robust as it used to be. But what I've said is that, I think we should restore CTA rides as a part of the beat for many of the cops who are working on regular beats in our districts, right? I think that that's important. I also will say that we can't just throw law enforcement at this. This has to be a larger a larger engagement for all of us. We know that under the previous administration, there was $100 million contract. I said $100 million contract for security in the system. And for those of us who ride the system, you see them, they're 4 or 5 unarmed security guards with German shepherds walking around many of the platforms. I don't think that that's deterred any crime. I don't think that's been helpful. And moreover, that's $100 million out of the city coffers that is not going to things that can create a better ridership experience that I think in turn creates more safety.
No, I agree. I think that kind of money should be spent on teaching young men how to read, get a skill, and get a job and not rob people. I think that money's better spent that way. But that's me on the soapbox now. Now, Kam Buckner, do you think, this is my wild idea, do you think that some kind of way with video screens or billboards or whatever, that the CTA starts, even in the media, social media especially, start posting the arrests that are made? So pretty much that if you commit a crime on the CTA, on bus or the rapid train, on the train, you will be arrested. And we're going to show you a picture, and we're going to remind all the other future criminals, you know what, don't do this because you're going to get caught.
Listen, I think that there's some credence to that for sure. We have the technology and ability to do that. People need to know that committing those type of crimes on our public transit system is not okay. And even some of the quality of life crimes, right? There are many people who I know who don't necessarily feel like they're going to be mugged on a CTA train, but they don't like the smell of marijuana smoke. And so they refuse to ride a train because it's very often that you can get on certain lines in this city and smell the fragrant aroma of cannabis when you walk on. And so, creating some order in that space, being very clear to folks that we take customer service very seriously, and this is going to be the best big city transit experience that you can have in this country. And if someone is running afoul of the law, that there will be consequences there. I think that is an important piece of this puzzle for sure, because right now, as I said, people think that they can do whatever they want on the CTA and get away with it. A lot of that is because the ridership has not been restored to where it needs to be, but there also needs to be some shifts so people know how it's supposed to work.
Well, Kam Buckner, thank you for being my guest. And do me a favor, end the show quickly with just, how do people get in touch with you and what you're doing, blah, 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 blah. Go at it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Mark. We're on all things social media at REP Kam, Kam Buckner, Buckner. Very active there and on all platforms. And if anybody has any questions or anything that me or my office can do to be helpful, even if you don't live in the district, please reach out. We're very accessible and we're here to help.